Okay, so for this one, we're going to go over the concept of overloading methods. So let's create a method up here. Let's call it public static max. Okay, and in this, public static int max. Our return type is going to be int, and let's call this max. And we're going to pass in two parameters, int num1 and int num2. Okay, and then here we're going to set up a return statement. We're going to do a ternary operator, and we're going to check if num1 is greater than num2. If this is true, then we obviously return in num1, else we return in num2. Okay, now in our main block, public static void main block, we're going to pretty much do system dot out dot print line, and we're going to call max, and then we're going to pass in two variables, 5 and 3. So pretty much what our output's going to be is it's going to be 5, because obviously 5 and 3 are going to be placed here, and then we compare 5 and 3. This is obviously true, so it's going to return 5. That's what's going to happen. But let's say I do system dot out dot print line, and I call in the same method max, but instead of passing in integer values, I pass in double values. What if I do that instead? What's going to happen? Well, obviously we can't put in the values into here, because this can only take in integer values. So, but what we can do is we can do an overloading method. So let me hold on. Let me bring this down a bit. So in this overloading method, we can keep the same name, max. So we do public static, but we're gonna have a return type to be double. We're still gonna call it max, and then we're gonna do double num1 and double num2. Okay, and then we do the same return statement. So it will be num1, num2. Okay, so a ternary operator pretty much. There we go. So pretty much what's going on here is when we execute this line of code, so pretty much it goes up here, it sees that it can't put in 5.35 and 11.53 in here. So it sees, but then it checks there is another method that has the same name max that it can where it can pass in these values in. So it'll execute this block instead, and then we get 11.53. Okay, and then we can also add in more parameters. So if we do system dot out dot print line, and we do max 17.23, 15.71, and 2.35. Okay, so that's three different parameters that we're passing in, and we can write another max method that returns in a double value, but it takes in 3 parameters instead of 2 parameters, because obviously this one, though it's passing in double values, it's missing a third parameter. This method can only take in 2 parameters, so we can call another method with the same name max that can take in 3 parameters. So double num1, double num2, and then double num3. Okay, and then here's another thing. In methods, you can call in methods again. Pretty much, you can call in other methods. So in this block, we would have to do a if statement where it compares 1 and 2, and then compares 3 as well. So it has to compare all 3 of these at the same time, or like have like nested if statements. And I kind of don't want to do that because that's going to be a lot of lines of code that I have to write. So, but what I can do, which is much more easier, is do return max, and I put in max again. And so I'm calling a method named max, and I'm passing in another method max, so num1, num2, and then I pass in num3. So let me show you what's going on here. Okay, so num1 is going to be represented by 17.53 because of this here. Num2 is going to be represented by 15.71 because of this, and num3 is going to be represented by 2.35. So we're going to call in a max method. I don't know if it's going to be this one or this one, but it's going to be one of those two. It's probably going to be this one because we're going to be working with double values. So I pass in 17.53 here, 15.71 here, and then 2.35 here. Now this part, we're going to call in this method here because this one takes in double values, or like, takes in double value parameters. Now, so that means num1 is going to be 17.53 and num2 is going to be 15.71. We compare our two and then we return in 17.51. So that means this whole thing is going to be 17.5, 53, not 51, my bad. So this whole thing is going to be 17.51, but we called in this max method. We actually still haven't called in this whole max method yet. That's what we're going to do now, knowing that this whole thing can be represented by 17.53, and then num3 is 2.35. What we're going to do now is pretty much go back to here, pass in num1 to be 17.53 and num2 to be 2.35. Compare the two, 17.53 is bigger, so that means we're going to return in 17.53, and then this prints out 17.53. Pretty confusing, but I hope some of you all were able to figure out what I was just saying. But yeah, that's how overload of methods works in Java.